Start? Yeah. Okay. Hi, comrades. We're drawing to an end of the conference, but not the end of the struggle. So, this session, I'm Sue Bolton, for anyone who doesn't know me, from over east. Well, actually, originally way up north. This is only going to be a fairly short session because it's really just an opportunity for a bit of an exchange between the international guests who've come to the conference and the conference organisers. So it's going to be done a little bit differently. And I think, I don't know what everyone else's viewpoint is, but my viewpoint is that the conference has been really great. It's been fantastic. For activists in Australia, where the class struggle probably isn't as high as in some of the countries represented on the panel today, this is a real shot in the arm to hear from socialist activists from other countries, especially in our region where Australian imperialism as well as US imperialism is totally tied up. So I think it's been fantastic. A lot's been jam-packed into 2 days. And I know people will feel frustrated that we didn't have as much time for discussion at the end of sessions, but we jammed in so many topics and speakers. So hopefully everyone had a chance to sort of try and catch up with at least some of the other speakers, participants in the conference during the informal sessions like meal breaks, etc. And, I think that what we touched on as part of the conference is with the themes and discussions is, trends which are applicable globally as well as our particular struggles in particular countries and various dynamics. So, obviously we only got to scratch the surface, but this is just really the beginning, not the end. And we will have more of these as well. But the important thing with this conference is it's not just the analysis and interesting political discussion, because political discussion and analysis is for purpose. It's to make us better as activists, as parties, in trying to think about how to intervene in the class struggle and advance a class struggle. And it's to help us, hopefully we have got a chance during the conference to swap notes on experiences of organising with the international comrades, but also people from different cities as well, where the situation, it's a lot of things that are the same from city to city, but they're not exactly the same. There's sometimes different political forces in different cities. And hopefully we've been able to swap notes about what struggles people have been involved in, what things that have people done which have sparked struggle, what initiatives we can take to spark struggle. And I think you can see that with the international Palestine movement at the moment, which is across the world, in the same way that the anti-Vietnam War struggle was across the world, that this movement is going to create, and has already created, a huge number of new activists, not only for Palestine, for other struggles, in the same way that the anti-Vietnam War movement created so many socialists and queer activists and feminists and black rights activists and migrant rights activists and all sorts of activists on different spheres of society that happen in Australia and around the world. So because we know that when people get involved in struggle, they start to think about how society works and start to, rather than watching screens and getting angry with what the ruling class is doing, actually get involved in trying to change society. And in that sense, political movements like the Palestine movement, but also little struggles which might be very local, very specific things, as well as bigger struggles, the movement is a great school in activism. It also teaches us politically. We advance and develop theory out of struggle. It is a school of collective struggle. So I'll introduce our speakers. Now, a lot of people have heard from all of the speakers here, but there might be some new people who just arrived towards the end of the conference who might not have got to hear some of the speakers. So I will introduce all of our speakers. So starting at this end of the table, we've got Dana Langasaroran from the Socialist Party of Malaysia. So followed by Clifton de Rosario from the CPIML Liberation in India. Followed by Elijah Tay, who's a Singaporean activist. Followed by Salim Valley, who's from South Africa, human rights activist and socialist activist. Followed by Jacob, who is a national co-convener of Socialist Alliance and a conference organiser. So, now this is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to give people, hopefully, strict time limits. So, we're going to do this as a little bit of a Q&A, and what I'm going to do is throw just a few questions for some of the comrades on the panel to maybe just make some observations, and within 3 minutes or less, and we won't necessarily go in the same order as people are sitting on the table. We'll see who wants to grab at each question first, and everyone will get a chance. But then after this session ends, people will have a chance to catch up informally, and we want people to do that because it's very expensive air travel. So make the most of it to chat to either the comrades on the panel, other international guests who are here, other comrades from other states or even other parts of your state. I know people who've come here from Margaret River and other parts of Western Australia as well, not just from Perth. So take the opportunity to chat and swap experiences of struggle. So, so we'll have dinner straight after this at 6:30. So that's our aim. I don't know if I'll be a strict enough chair, but we'll give it a go. So, I just wanted to maybe ask comrades on the panel, we've had a great conference exchanging experiences about the fight for a better world. I just was wondering, what are some of your reflections about the conference and what ideas has it brought up for you? So just, who would like to answer first? Anyone got any particular feelings about the conference, or what was, maybe what was the most useful discussion you felt was useful maybe for your struggle, or that you think was most insightful? Anyone? Point a finger.
In alphabetical order.
Okay. Well, Salim Valley.
I know we're running out of time, so I'll be very quick. I think that congratulations to all of you, and in a word, this has been brilliant. I'm fully aware that it takes a lot of hard work and planning and resources, and you've pulled it off with very little resources. But this is such an important gathering in these terrible times. The question of internationalism, the question of debating and discussing the road ahead is vital, and I think the necessity of organization is clear. And I think Socialist Alliance, it's necessary for us in different parts of the world. It provides a space. I think we need to remember where we come from. Just a few years ago, we've had the pandemic with tragic consequences for people and communities. And that tragedy shows that everything must change, you know, or in the words of, that was Naomi Klein, in the words of Arundhati Roy, we can do something about the doomsday machine. It also exposed capitalism, or the, you know, putting profits before the lives of people in a literal way. It exposed the hoarding of vaccines, vaccine nationalism. It exposed the WTO, the shameful way in the way some countries didn't want a waiver on patents to benefit big pharma and multinational corporations. The climate catastrophe as well has shown why we need to challenge capitalism. And once again, with the mass movement and struggle globally, in the same way, the women's liberation movement, the struggle for reproductive rights, LGBTI plus, black liberation could be co-opted. Elite capture. Hillary Clinton calls herself a feminist. Obama was the acceptable face of US imperialism. And that happens when you don't factor in class, where you don't challenge capitalism. You know, these days, we need to, of course, confront the conservatives' denialism, but also the liberals' technological fixes, that there is no way out. I know Bezos and there's another export from South Africa, Elon Musk, thinks that you can terraform Mars. No, you can't. You have to challenge the system of capitalism without, for an instance, denying that the question of race, of identity, of all of that must be integrated into our analysis, and we need to fight it together. So I think we believe in being against racial capitalism, patriarchy. We believe that we need to fight greenwashing, pinkwashing, and that the real enemy is not foreigners or migrants, but it's the system of global capitalism, racial capitalism, patriarchal capitalism, a capitalism that messes up nature and the environment. I think that's 2 minutes.
No.
That's 1 minute.
A little over 3. That was very good. It was a little over 3, but it's very good. Who would like to go next? Maybe Elijah or Dan or Quentin?
I think I'll come down to this conference. It's great. I think it's great. Again, I think congratulations to Socialist Alliance and Green Left for this. Our party has had a very strong relationship with the Socialist Alliance, and I think that's a relationship that's going to continue. It gets strengthened over all of these meetings. I think I was here last year as well. I was in Melbourne. It was supposedly colder than Perth, but I can't say. I've suffered then, I'm suffering now. But I think in terms of the situation that, the kind of political challenges that the world is going through, the kind of oppressions, Palestine in the backdrop, but of course we've heard of what's happening in Papua, we heard about what's happening in New Caledonia as well. So these colonial kind of remnants, these kind of oppressions that are continuing on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, the kind of this global right, far right that's growing. I think the kind of collaboration that's happening there, I think we need to also think about the class collaborations that we need to get into. if you're trying to fight this. And I think for me, coming here this time around has also been the same thing. I must say, for me at least this time, I'm so happy because, comrades like Elijah, Peter, Linus, to hear about the kind of fascinating struggles that they're doing in Singapore. It just amazes me. For me, I was telling them last night as well, to see young people in the face of authoritarianism, standing up to it, my God, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than that.
Yes,
and I think, for me, if there's any real takeaway from this, it's the insuppressible spirit of the human being. And that's what Palestine shows us. And I think all of the young comrades here, everyone, that's the thing. That for me is what I'm going to take back. So yeah, all strength to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, 3 minutes. You were in time, yes. Dana or Elijah or...
Okay, good evening. Hello? Okay. Good evening, all. Okay, I have one question. Is it socialism relevant, so we need it? Yes. Yeah. So, this thing we see, we can find it in these 3 days. We can see a lot of struggles, and we see the working class is still struggling. So, I think this is the time we need to bring up the Socialist Alliance together, and we make the solidarity within internationally. I think it's very important, because I can see in Australia means the Aboriginal that group also, they are facing issues, and also we can see out internationally also we face a lot of issues like a war, imperialism. So I think in this conference it's like I can sum up that the Socialist Alliance is very important, and I think we can work together internationally and we can bring changes. And of course, we want a better world in the future. Thank you.
So one of the central kind of theme of this conference was climate action, not war. And I think throughout this whole weekend of this conference, I think it highlighted, I guess, the number of the kind of important issues that are currently happening in the world. Because it's quite clear that capitalism is really not delivering for the majority of people. Capitalist politicians often pose themselves as the solutions to a lot of the problems that we kind of face. Currently, we're facing climate catastrophe. We're currently facing a housing crisis. We're currently facing a cost of living crisis where people are struggling to afford basic necessities, even in a rich country like Australia. Yet, the priorities of our government and our capitalist politicians is to prepare the ground for more war. It is to support the genocide in Gaza. It is also to implement policies that benefit property developers. They actually, in a sense, capitalism offers no concrete solutions to the issues that we face today, which is why I think conferences like this are so important, because we're not actually discussing. No other sort of conference, apart from no other conference, really discusses the actual ideas and the organisation that we actually need to be able to challenge the dominance of the capitalist powers and the horrible policies that they're wanting to impose on us.
Can everyone hear me? All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah.
All right, that's great. Okay, I prefer facing my face this way also because my left profile is nicer. So better for the photos. Okay. Thanks so much for having me and all our comrades here today. I think that we've learned a lot, aside from adapting to the cold weather here. Because I'm a student, I took the question very literally, and I'm gonna share some key points that I wrote down in my little notebook. So I think that one of the key reminders that came out of this conference is the importance of international solidarity, which all the comrades have talked about so far. You know, we look at what's happening in Palestine, we look at all the other wars that's happening in the world that the US perpetuates or has their hand in, and we know that we need to be in solidarity with one another. Because if we aren't, then who's gonna save us? You know, we need to save one another. We need to put the pressure on the genocidal states, on the states that are perpetuating war. I mean, mainly the US and every other state that's complicit in the arms trade, in diplomatic ties, right? And we need to make our stance very clear that our position is that we are for one another, we are for the people, you know, and it's not the state that we give our taxpayer money to, that we give our votes to, that misuse that to perpetuate violence on our fellow people. We cannot allow that to happen. And that's one of the key things that we must take away. And I think that our informal discussions later on, or that has happened in the past few days, will be very helpful to concretize what are the solid ways in which, the practical ways that we can support one another and extend solidarity to one another across the globe. And another thing that I took away was that, you know, in conversations about achieving First Nation sovereignty, Comrade Raylene Cooper talked about how industry and culture cannot go hand in hand. So when we talk about industry, we talk about the state of capitalism. What they're damaging is not just our cost of living, our housing. It's also our culture, our arts, our traditions. We cannot let them take that away from us. We need to preserve it. We need to protect it. And because that is what makes us who we are, that's what matters to us. And that is what we need to protect for one another. And we can't let our culture be eroded by the greed and the selfishness of the capitalist and the authoritarian state.
He hasn't finished.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing.
Serious duty.
Am I good on time? I hope I am.
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay, that's great. Okay, another thing is that with the $1 trillion military budget that the US has, there is a resurgence of the Cold War, and that's not just some conspiracy theory that we might have watched on YouTube when we were 5, you know. This is real. There is various wars that are happening across the globe, and we need to acknowledge that our taxpayer money is going towards that. We need to convince people that we shouldn't let our money turn into blood money. Yeah, and I think another important reminder for me also was how in the session on how capitalism ruined the internet, I was just deeply reminded of how the internet communication started as a public invention, and we need to take that back, you know. And it's not up to the state to prescribe what can or cannot be on the internet, especially in Singapore, where there are so many more media restrictions laws, and I mean across the globe as well, where journalists are not allowed to enter war zones, not allowed to enter occupied Palestine and Palestine. That's where we need to recognize that the media, the internet, these are things that the people created and was created with public funds, and that's what we need to take back. You know, the media, the internet, every form of communication, and just everything that exists in the world belongs to the people, belongs to the commons, and we need to take that back. Last point. Okay. I think. Very grateful that we have this conference, because knowledge production and knowledge sharing is so important for us to exchange ideas on how we can move forward and also reflect on our histories, what we can learn from them and what we can learn from one another. And I think that the reason why capitalism and authoritarianism and imperialism, they clamp down so hard on the people, because they're scared of us, because we are a force to be reckoned with. And we need to keep reminding them and ourselves of why we are so scary, and we need to keep scaring them back. Yeah.
Okay, another question. So, I mean, we've all been involved in some form of Palestine solidarity, trying to end this genocide. And we know that, one country gets away with a genocide, it gives confidence to other countries to commit genocide. I mean, it's, Israel isn't the only perpetrator of genocide in the world, but it is the most horrific thing that's happening, that a lot of countries around the world are wholeheartedly supporting, arming and giving other support to Israel. Could comrades briefly talk about what we can do as leftists in the region to advance the Palestine struggle? Are there any ideas about what we can collaborate on to help maximise the pressure on our countries, respective countries, as well as internationally to end the genocide? And also, at the same time that this is happening, all of the Quad countries are about to engage in military exercises in the Pacific, which an Indigenous conference in Hawaii just recently passed a motion against, including condemning countries like Indonesia, which supposedly support Palestine, but they're engaged in this military endeavour with Israel and Australia, US, etc., etc. So anyway, just throw it over to people to mention something about the Palestine struggle and what we might be able to do within the region. Jacob?
Well, to kind of start off with that, I mean, I think I think a key principle for socialists is that when it comes to kind of any liberation struggle, we cannot throw any other oppressed group under the bus. And I think that's why I think, you know, in some of the work that Socialist Alliance has done in some of the branches, like some of our comrades in Melbourne were involved in organising a rally in Dandenong around Palestine, and part of the focus of that rally was actually about bringing together all the issues, all the different genocides that that have been happening, you know, from what's happening in Sudan, West Papua, to historical genocides like the Tamil genocide. We attempted to kind of bring together all those kind of experiences of genocide into in linking it up with the Palestine with Palestine. And I think also another kind of point to also make with that, I mean, that's something we need to see, but we also want to see it at a much larger scale. I mean, that was a rally of like 100 to 200 people. We want to actually see that kind of international solidarity at a much larger scale. And I think that's where I think for us as socialists, you know, we have an important viewpoint that, you know, we are for the independent power of the oppressed. We're not for aligning ourselves with capitalist states, which play a role in enacting a lot of violence and frequently make trade-offs. But also, I think this, the second last point, I guess in terms of, our sort of my kind of comments in terms of how we can strengthen the Palestine movement as a whole, is, I mean, the Palestine movement has been a very important moment in Australian politics. I mean, as someone who has been involved in revolutionary politics since 2013, this has probably been the most exciting in terms of the amount of political activity, the amount of experience that we've sort of had organising. But, you know, one thing that the Labor Party likes to say is that, you know, they like to accuse the left and the Greens and as well of we've apparently imported a conflict overseas that actually has nothing to do with what's happening in Australia. Well, actually, I think we have to make the argument it has everything to do with what's happening in Australia, because if a country like Australia is endorsing, implicitly supporting a genocide, how can we expect to trust them on climate action, housing, and also addressing the interests of workers? And of course, the final point there I want to end on is that's why we have to link this moment, the mobilisation around Palestine, to all those issues of oppression, whether it's opposing the genocide, other genocides, and fighting for housing for everyone. We need to come out stronger out of this movement, so we can be more prepared to fight the other coming struggles ahead.
Would anyone else like to make any comments?
No, just one thing on that. I think the struggle for a free Palestine is something that all of us, you know, activists have heard for the longest times in our lives. And what's happening at this point is just barely conscionable. It's, I'm sure, you know, it really troubles people no end. And of course, it's troubling the Palestinians no end. I mean, the kind of death, the kind of, the tragic kind of loss of their lands, etc. But it's also seen, I think, in terms of solidarity, like an incredible time where it's, again, you know, the fact that you have encampments, say, I think you had in Australia, or in the US, where students actually, they're paying a price. And it's not just the students, it's a lot of the staff, the teachers, the professors who are supporting this, who are actually paying a price. I think what's happening is that we have reached a tipping point now with Palestine, that enough of this kind of settler colonialism, enough of this form of imperialism, we want to raise our voices against that. I think, how do we strengthen that? That for me is really crucial. The second thing, one of the things that we did actually, when this, I mean, in India, of course, we have a fascist regime over there, which kind of really took a very middle path kind of a thing when the entire issue broke out, after October 7th, the kind of bombing, so on and so forth. And ours is a country, India, which, one of the pioneers of the non-alignment movement, where it was about post-colonial kind of nations coming together with a very different imagination for what the world could be. I mean, now that seems like a really far cry. But, we've been always saying that the country can't step away from that when it comes to Israel. And I think it's because of the various agitations that we had over there, the protests that we had, that ultimately even Modi had to come around in terms of, the position that he took on Palestine. And lastly, I think even in terms of this working class solidarities, I think it's really crucial. I think for Malaysia, there's been the export of workers to Israel. There's been the export of workers from India to Israel, basically to replace the Palestinians who've been thrown out. And we've done our load of protests, etc. over there. But this class solidarity with Palestine, I don't think it has to come. It's not a thing of just pain of human suffering. It's a class solidarity. It's this fight against imperialism. It's the fight against capitalism. That's what really brings all of us together in this this fight for justice for Palestine. I think that needs to be really foregrounded, and we can't keep quiet. I've been hearing. Sorry, last point. I know that there's also a kind of an exhaustion that sets in. That okay, how much can we talk about Palestine? Because let's say where I'm coming from, every single day there's something which is being thrown at you by that kind of a state. But I think we still need to say that irrespective of anything, we'll not stay quiet on Palestine. We will continue to speak about Palestine. I think that's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned, at least.
Anyone else like to say anything? Or
Yeah, I want to touch briefly on a point that Comrade Jacob made, right? About how, the state is, when a state is complicit in genocide, how can we trust them to do all these other things to fix our local issues? And with regards to the argument that we're importing conflict, the reality is that, it is the state that is importing these imperial ties into our countries, and we need to reclaim that narrative. We need to be clear that that is the reality of our lands, that we are paying our taxpayer dollars to go towards the arms that Israel used to occupy Palestine, to kill Palestinians, and that is the truth that we need to share with the people in our country as well. And I think that in Singapore, organizing is really hard. Getting masses together is really hard because our authoritarian laws are really repressive. So I think that what could be helpful for Singapore comrades, for various reasons, right? Like to boost the morale of organizers in Singapore, and also to make sure that the actions are also seen in Gaza as well, so that the people in Palestine know that the people of Singapore are not silent. We are with them, and we will keep fighting for them to make sure that Singapore ends ties with diplomatic, military ties with Israel, and our people will not be complicit. We don't agree with what our state is doing with regards to the arms trade and diplomatic ties with Israel. So I think that what would be helpful is that if international comrades as well could help share about when, for example, when students had the first strike in a decade, 100 students came together on 2nd February to do teach-ins, to skip class, to have their own picnics, to have film screenings about what's happening in Palestine. And on the same day, 70 people delivered letters, 3 of whom have since been charged 2-3 days ago in court. I think that if there is more noise that is made about this from comrades around the globe, that lends more strength to the power of what we're doing in Singapore, and also it it lends more, it lends more strength to that, and also can encourage greater participation with the acknowledgement that these actions do have effect. They are real, and they are, although we don't see the effects of it now in terms of what the government is doing favorably towards, or rather like what it's doing unfavorably towards Palestine, but we see that there is a growing mass, there is a growing strength of the people who see the underlying issues of imperialism, who see the underlying issues of capitalism, who see the underlying issues of authoritarianism, not only when we see the Palestinian struggle, not only when we fight for Palestinian liberation, but also when we see how terribly the state treats our own people when we speak up about the atrocities that the state perpetuates against our Palestinian siblings. Yeah.
Thanks. I might move on to the next question. So on the stage, we've got people who come from, every country has different political dynamics, and we're preoccupied, with different struggles depending on our political context. And it would be great to get some comments from people, from comrades, about what is unique about the political context you're operating in, and what do you think is universal about your experiences?
Wow.
Yeah, Dana?
Okay, actually, the unique thing we are facing is racism issues. So actually, the racism is used to break the working class. So this issue we are facing, actually, I think this issue we are facing at everywhere. So in Malaysia, we are facing this kind of issue. Actually, this is our main issue to make all the workers to get together. So as we know, the British, they are divide and rule by using this race. So after we get independence, is still the same. The politician is using racism to break the people. And when we are trying to bring them together, that racism still is high in working class, and we are trying to break. We are still trying to bring together, and we also have failed to mobilize migrant workers. So in Malaysia, we have around 3.3 million migrant workers in Malaysia, but we also failed to bring them together because of this racism issue. Okay, we are actually facing two type of issues. One is in Malaysian worker divided by race, and also we have a problem with Malaysian worker and migrant workers. So the Malaysian workers think migrant workers is a threat for them. They are like taking all the benefits because they are growing now. Means the migrant workers is growing in Malaysia because the Malaysian they are given salary in manufacturing, the construction. The Malaysian, they are giving low salary. Means that our basic wage is still low. So the employer is bringing all the migrant workers to work in this kind of industry. So the Malaysian worker feel the migrant workers is getting all the benefit of Malaysian workers. So this is the thing we are facing in Malaysia. And another one is, and also the fixed term contract, the casualization of local workers. So the fixed term contracts. So now the contract system is a very famous now in Malaysia. So the permanent worker, the civil servant also now has become contract workers. So it's a bad thing for workers actually. So I think this is a thing, the unique thing is happening in Malaysia.
Who would like to go next? Do you want me to pick somebody?
Okay, I mean,
Yeah,
Dana could
Salim.
have been talking about South Africa. It's similar issues we face as well, but it's also the inability of liberalism and neoliberalism to fulfill their promises, which allows for the extreme right to capitalize on the frustrations of people. And you find this globally, whether it's in Brazil or India or South Africa, and that is the danger. And it will get worse. With climate catastrophe, there'll be more migration, more refugees, and people will be scapegoated instead of the system being questioned. So I think our work globally is cut out for us, and we can't just do it in our own nation states. So internationalism is more vital than ever before, but an internationalism that doesn't rely on the stale, dogmatic, formulaic notions. That is one of the attractions of gatherings like this, because, I mean, as Lisa mentioned, that hope lies in a culture of resistance. Or, you know, Paulo Freire said we'll discover the road as we embark on the journey. So I think it's through struggle that we will get answers. There's no blueprint, but we have a general outline. And I do think that all our countries, they are universal things. Today, lucre and investment, and you know, the old orthodoxies around economic growth, it trumps solidarity. And therefore, solidarity is absolutely vital to fight against the failure of capitalism and the false solutions. I'll stop there. Thanks.
All right. Anyone else like to? Okay, Jacob.
Yeah. So they are, one of the things about capitalism is that it very much is a global kind of system. The capitalists are very much, you know, the Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gates of the world. They're all incredibly organised. They're all very much learning from what each particular capitalist state does. And of course, when we're in so-called Australia, there are some particularly unique contexts. There's the fact, you know, where there's the fact that we live on an isolated landmass where there's massive amounts of mining resources, lots of agricultural to exploit, etc. Of course, we have a lot in common with countries like the United States and Canada. We're a settler colonial state that dispossessed the original First Nations community. And of course, it is that particular history that gives Australia some quite unique kind of policies. I mean, we're the ones that started the whole offshore detention regime. And of course, now we have countries, it's now not so unique, unfortunately, because countries like Europe are actually learning about it, and currently Britain is trying to implement similar policies. So I think that's, and of course the other kind of unique context that we also are in is the fact that, you know, in countries like Britain and the United States, neoliberalism in Australia wasn't implemented by some conservative madman like Margaret Thatcher or Ronald Reagan. It was actually implemented by our Labor Party. And of course, I think a lot of social democrat parties learned from that too, because in the 90s and the early 00s, gradually most of the European social democratic parties are completely discredited because they're implementing all the neoliberal economic policies that is disenfranchising workers, but also impacting on our ability to organise. And I think then that goes into the commonalities of what we have to fight. And I think I was quite inspired by hearing from some of the Singaporean comrades, because we do have common projects. We want to build a working class fighting organisation that's committed to challenging the injustices of the capitalist system. But I think also the inspiring example of the Singapore example is that it doesn't matter what conditions we face, no matter how authoritarian or oppressive we are, there is always hope to build a socialist working class organisation. So I think we...
Elijah wants to speak.
I mean, since Singapore got a special mention, I thought I should speak as well. Yeah, so I think that what's unique about our authoritarian state is that it's very sophisticated in the ways that they have oppressed and silenced people. So I want to give an example, right? So for migrant workers in Singapore, they're in a particularly precarious position. If they speak up, it's very easy for the state to just deny their work pass, and essentially they get deported. So this is what happened to one of our migrant workers. His name was Zakir. So he was very vocal during the COVID-19 pandemic when the migrant workers were essentially imprisoned during lockdown. So they were forced to stay in their dormitories for at least 18 months. They were not let out of their dormitories, in their cramped dormitories where there were high rates of COVID-19 infections because they were so tight. They couldn't practice safe distancing measures or anything, and there was simply no proper hygiene procedures. So that angered a lot of people, and I think that also fostered a lot of sympathy among Singaporeans towards the plight of migrant workers in Singapore. So when Zakir was deported, it amassed a lot of... It did cost the incumbent party their image. So recently, another one of our migrant brothers was deported. His name was Sharif. I mean, his name is still Sharif. His name is Sharif. He was deported because he was facing, officially on paper, he was facing harassment from loan sharks, which he wrote to the police for assistance because the loan shark was harassing the employers. Then the police advised that if you just fire the worker, then maybe the harassment will stop. So that's what the employers did. So he got fired. His work pass was not extended, and he was deported. And these are the more sophisticated means that the state uses to silence the people who have been speaking up so loudly about the atrocities that they face and that we face in Singapore. So I think that sophistication is also built into other aspects. For example, when we want to take on housing loans or housing grants, we have to show a 12-month income payslip. So for organizers who cannot get a job because both private and public sectors are afraid of this leftist threat, then we can't get a job, we can't get housing. Even if we do, the rent would take up about half of our income, and so the prices are exorbitant in Singapore. So and if you do get access to housing, let's say you can purchase a house, you're essentially in debt for the next 25 to 35 years to pay off your mortgage. So that also puts you in a position of precarity whereby if you speak up politically, you risk losing your jobs because everyone is so scared of standing up against the government. And if you don't, then how do you mobilize the masses in a way that's more public and loud? Yeah, so, but at the same time, the state may be smart, but we are smarter. So we have come up with many creative ways to circumvent the various aspects of repression of the state. I think many of which was talked about in the previous session, so I think I'm a bit running out of time, so I won't repeat it. But I'll give a very, very brief example, if possible. So protests are illegal in Singapore, right? If you hold a placard for 15 seconds, take a photo, you get charged for that. So what has been helpful in the past is that we delivered letters to the Istana, so the government house, and that's the opportunity for us to, be with one another physically while we also commit to a political action in the sense of bringing our demands to the government. Of course, that recently has brought about charges, but that is a tactic that has worked in the past for at least a few instances of letter deliveries where people didn't face too much direct action from the police. So we are constantly figuring out how to go about creatively in our resistance in Singapore. Yeah.
Clifton.
Couple of things I wanted to share. In a sense, I think the kind of, like I said, the challenges that are there, we all accept. There's this, and I think what Jacob is also saying, we're literally on the brink of a catastrophe. Whether you really get back from this or not is the question that all of us really have to deal with. And it's not just climate change; it's the kind of, the devastating kind of social and political inequality, and that's the thing that we're all fighting. So for me, I think when we say we're fighting that in a particular state or a particular country, I think being extremely conscious of how you construct class struggle. So for instance, if in our country, if you say class struggle is only about looking at it from a very economic point of view, that's economic reductionism. Because class itself is not an economic category, it's a social category. So if we are not going to be conscious of, say, how patriarchy is working, if you're not going to be conscious of, say, how caste in our context, then I think you're really missing the boat over there. So I think while there's this large, really kind of this evil economic system that we're all trying to fight, I think there's a lot of times these kinds of oppressions fall through the cracks, and I think one needs to be really conscious about that. And again, I'm going back to the thing that I said in the morning. Like for instance, in Australia, if indigenous people, if the First Nations are in such a situation, like what is it that we can do to ramp that struggle up? That's an urgency. If I'm in India, and for me, the emancipation of Dalits or ending caste system, or fighting Islamophobia, if that's not on my agenda, then what am I doing? So I think when we talk about the urgency, I think the urgency is around us. Sometimes, and there are some things that we just miss. So I would say, really for me, that's something that I feel that we should be really, really conscious of, and which is why I think this question is really, it's an extremely crucial question, because we tend to forget, and we tend to get caught up in too many other things. And I remember, when if you the kind of fights that people are doing, this is the last point. So people are paying with their lives for changing this world. They're being shot down by regimes. They're being thrown into jails. Lives are rotting. Coming from India, where you have student activists, young, dynamic activists like Umar Khalid, Gulfisa. I need to take their names, who have been in jail for the last 4 years only because they stood up to the kind of fascist agenda of the state, or lawyers, human rights activists who've been in jail for 5 years now under trumped up charges. And if you go across the country, Adivasis, Dalits who've been fighting against, people who've been fighting Adani, for instance, their coal mines, people who've been fighting against extraction of coal from their areas, they've been in jail for years on end. Dalits who've been standing up to the caste system, they've been arrested. So I think the price people are paying for change is so immense. I would say, you just take a pause to salute them, in this journey.
I agree with that. There's a lot of warriors in our movement, some of whom have fallen but are living on in the struggle through newer activists. I'm just going to come to the last question, and maybe, because, we come from different countries, we're trying to build socialist action in our various countries, or build working class struggle. So what are some of the sorts of things that could be done to foster greater collaboration between the left internationally to build the anti-capitalist and socialist movements? Okay.
I'll just take a
Let's
stab at
read,
that.
right?
No, really, I think firstly, I've said this to Jacob last time also. He was very kind last time. I actually stayed at his house when I was in Melbourne. But it actually meant a lot that, that this collaboration is not a superficial collaboration. This coming together that even happens over here. I think the kind of effort that you all are making, that is the kind of effort that we really need to make. I mean, and when you all come to, for our programs in India, I think that kind of coming together, even the physical coming together, is absolutely essential. I think we need to just keep this kind of the sharing of knowledge going. Like I was telling Fred the other day, Isaac. I think Green Left, for instance, one goes to Green Left to try and understand what are the important political developments that are happening over. Otherwise, you are not even going to know, because mainstream media is not going to tell you any of this. So I think this kind of this exchange of politics, the sharing of strategies, these are things that we really have to work on. Unfortunately, I think the kind of internationalism that you're talking of is what is required, but I don't think we're giving too much of thought to that. That how is this internationalism actually going to come about? When you're talking about class solidarities across, across these boundaries, and these are unsurmountable boundaries. There are people who cannot even come for your conference if they don't have a visa. So how is it that you overcome these boundaries to actually build that kind of a internationalism? How do you build that class solidarity across these boundaries? For me, that's really crucial. And in a way, I think what some of us did and so a lot of other people have done for Palestine, I think that in a way actually shows us some journey. But I think we still need to discuss about this much more, and we need to come up with very concrete ways in which we can share our tactics, share our strategies, share our forms of struggle, share our wins, share our losses, and share our hopes, going forward. That I think is essential.
Thank you. Anyone else like to have a go? Jacob?
Yes. I mean, I think this kind of question goes back to, one of the reasons that Socialist Alliance organised this conference. It's not just about hosting a bunch of discussions with interesting speakers. We're here to actually learn from the kind of experiences of struggle that socialists have overseas. And of course, for us, we've strategically, put a big emphasis on linking up with socialist activists from the Asia Pacific, because at the end of the day, Australia has a very close relationship with the Asia Pacific countries, and a lot of what Australia as a capitalist state is doing to the Asia Pacific has to be opposed, and we have to build the kind of independent resistance to it. I think the other important thing as well is every time that a revolutionary uprising happens, whether you go to the October Revolution in Russia, whether you go to the Cuban Revolution or the May 1968, every single significant uprising has always had international significance. It's always pushed struggle in our respective countries, and of course, part of the relationships and the stuff that we're building here through having these different socials is actually about laying the seeds for that, because capitalism is always going to be in crisis. We actually don't know what's going to happen next, so it's actually important that we do have these conferences, even put out joint statements of support, give solidarity to our struggles, and we use Green Left as a vehicle for that, because when those uprisings happen, we actually want to be prepared to be able to make the most of it to advance our side in the class struggle.
Salon, can you stand up? Yeah.
Yeah, at the risk of repeating what has been said, that internationalism is about praxis. It's not just having a line, it's about how can we concretely support people in struggle. It's about building this culture of supporting each other, understanding that capitalism is a global system, that we fight most effectively our capitalists in the country we are in, but we also support the struggles of people elsewhere. I mean, I'm thinking particularly of, for example, Australian mining companies that are doing terrible things around the world, including in South Africa, where people have been assassinated, where politicians have been corrupted. And, you know, we need to share information about that. I think the Palestinian, supporting the Palestinian struggle is so important in that sense as well, because it's against militarism. It's against the arms manufacturers. It's against the lies and fabrications. I mean, it's incredible how people around the world have been lied to, how the most base views on chauvinistic views, Islamophobic views, how racism is actually acceptable when it comes to the Palestinians, double standards. And it's about us, yes, questioning and changing the narrative, the dominant narrative in the mainstream press. Sorry, I have to talk about Murdoch again. It's doing that, but it's also in the true spirit of internationalism, supporting the comrades in whichever countries we come from, and to understand that, you know, in the words of people we value, whether it's Rosa Luxemburg or Lenin or others, that the working class doesn't have a fatherland. You know, this whole ethno-nationalism we need to challenge in a genuine way. And I do need to say, and it's linked, what you were saying, is that class is not isolated from these other social categories. Class is gendered. The feminist movement has taught us that. The Black Lives Movement has taught us that class is also raced, you know. So this thing about separating class with the struggle against racism or climate catastrophe or the feminization of work, etc., is something that I thought a long time ago we've overcome. But in this kind of gathering, I think it's become quite clear to us. And I just want to finally say, because I know we need to wrap up, and you know, it's a cliche, and I've mentioned a few cliches earlier, but it's true at this particular point, particularly for young people and others. We need to tap into the creativity. We need to tap into cultural forms of action, that reading groups and reading Das Kapital is necessary. We do need to do that. But I think also because of the grief and the psychosocial problems of capitalism, the anomie, the alienation, collective solidarity. And, you know, I don't believe in individualistic bourgeois therapy, but I do believe that a lot of us do need healing, that people are suffering out there, and that we need to find collective ways of supporting each other. So coming to the cliche I was telling you about, it's basically Raymond Williams, who, you know, he said, and it's still true, truer than ever before, that to be truly radical is to make hope possible than despair convincing.
Anyone else like to? You don't have to. Yeah.
Very quickly.
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, Dana next. Dana next. Yeah. And then Elijah.
Okay, I think in this conference, I think we are creating a network internationally. So, but after this, we must continue this relationship if let's say we have any issues in our countries, we must let the other comrades in other countries to know and let them give a solidarity support. So like they did our Singapore issues, the 3 ladies arrested. So maybe we as the social leftist group, we must give solidarity support to them. Maybe we can release a statement, so something like that. And we must continuously we keep in touch with each other, so that we can have a bigger coalition, leftist social alliance, and we must make it more bigger each year. So I think this kind of programs we must organize yearly, or maybe we can see our affordable, it depends. And maybe we can do, because I think with Social Alliance, we have PSM and Social Alliance, we have a good relationship. We also will invite them, we will invite Social Alliance comrades to our conference, Socialism. So I think this kind of program we must open to all other international comrades. So I think that's a better way.
Thanks. Over to Elijah.
Okay, very briefly. So I think that 3 main things. One thing would be sharing resources and knowledge with one another. So the question of how do we foster collaboration between the left internationally? I think that's what we're doing today, and what we've been doing in all the conferences and all the social and all the knowledge-based gatherings that we've had. I think that these are great spaces, because it's not a lecture where we talk and then you all go home. It's like we have meals together, we discuss ideas together, and I think these networks are important. I hope we'll be able to exchange contacts during these informal settings as well, so that we can figure out what are the ways that we can work together practically on different issues or different aspects that we experience when we return back to our countries as well. Another thing, news updates that Comrade Dana talked about as well. I think it would be good, like what she said, if we can share with one another what's happening, not just shit like the 3 comrades being charged in court, right, and all these other things, but also we need to celebrate our wins together. I think that really builds morale with one another, right? Like these things work, organizing works. I think we need to be reminded of that, so that we don't feel disheartened. Don't feel disheartened or despair, whenever the authoritarian state or capitalist state clamps down on us. But we also continue to build the hope that Comrade Salim talked about, right? Where we see that, what we're doing works. What we're doing, even though it might not produce the win, the big win that we are working towards, but there are small indicators of wins that we do see when we do engage in actions, and those are things that are worth celebrating and worth remembering and archiving, so that we know, and the people who continue to fight knows that this is a fight worth fighting for, and it's not only worthy but necessary as well. Yeah.
Well, I think people can gather there has already been a certain level of networking and collaboration between the parties, and also by parties I don't just mean long-established parties, because Singaporean comrades have sort of started to organise more recently. And I also think that's an example, because we're not always in a place where there's already an organisation, a left organisation. Sometimes we need to initiate campaigns and might be on a low level. I mean, not just in different countries, but also in a region of Australia where you just end up and something happens and people are pissed off about it, and you start to talk about joining forces and starting a struggle. And in fact, when the Communist Party was a mass party in Australia in the 40s and even early 50s, it was about 23,000 people. I mean, the organised left is not as large as that now, but it had a lot of regional organisation, and they had, they did a lot of wonderful work. I mean, there were some problematic aspects as well, but we need in every country on the platform, we need to expand our forces so that we can have more influence. And I like Clifton's comment that we're smarter than them. Sorry, not Elijah's comment that we're smarter than them. So anyway, I think that's what we've got to take forward. Is people have to be, have to take the initiative wherever you end up. You might be in a union where a union leadership is putting forward a rotten step forward, and you need to speak up. And you might not be an experienced activist, but you might, if you speak up, then until someone speaks up, others might not speak up and think they're the only ones who think this is a shit deal being sold to you. So everyone needs to, we need to build and inspire that confidence and empowerment of people to take action and spread our forces, and hopefully people will join the actual organised socialist movement as well, Socialist Alliance and any of the parties and organisations represented on the panel, but also joining the movement. So I'd really like to, well, first of all, before I thank all of the guests, Socialist Alliance intends to make this an annual event. We have organised Ecosocialism conferences before. We've organised Asia Pacific Solidarity conferences. And I think it is a bit special in Australia to have a socialist conference that brings a lot of people together from our region. Not only our region, but especially for the Asia Pacific region. And in fact, I would say often the Pacific often gets ignored in Australia, including on the left. And so we want to really change that. We want that collaboration within this region as well as beyond. So we're planning to have another Eco-Socialism conference next year. And next year it'll be in Melbourne, August, September. I'm not sure exactly the exact date. We've got to work that out, make sure it doesn't clash with anything. But people, please put that down in your diaries as a definite thing that's going to happen. And we will organise these every year, and we certainly want to support any other initiatives that Socialist Party of Malaysia initiates, or CPRML, or any of the other parties in the region, and also Singaporean comrades. We want to support any of the activities. It's a shame that the Filipino and Pakistani comrades didn't get their visas, because they would have contributed a lot, like having comrades here in person, so you can have more of that discussion rather than just a Zoom talk is really great. So definitely keep that in your, put that down in your diaries. If anyone's got thoughts, especially amongst the international guests, about what sort of themes, discussions, what sort of things might be, ways of improving or would be worthwhile addressing at the conference. Usually we can't do more than 2 days because most people can't get off work for more than 2 days, but that's usually the limits that we've got. But definitely at the end of this session, don't go away. We are going to have dinner at 6:30. We'll also hear from Sam in a moment. Just a couple more things first before I introduce Sam. Sam will make some final comments from the organising committee. If you've enjoyed the conference and found it really useful and fascinating, then definitely sign up to become a Green Left supporter if you haven't already done so, and definitely sign up to join Socialist Alliance as well. So it's not too late. Do that before you walk out the door. And I'd really like to, and also definitely don't rush out the door. If you can't stay for dinner, don't rush out the door, because at the very end, after Sam gives some closing comments, we want to do a group photo of everybody. So that would be really, don't run away. At least stay for that. And if you hate photos, you can always hide behind someone who's taller. So don't run away. But I'd just really like to thank all of our international comrades. So over to Sam for final closing comments from the organising committee. And you're doing the raffle, aren't you?
Yeah, we will do the raffle. All right, on behalf of the organising committee, I just need to smash through some thank yous. I'll be as quick as I can because everyone's been really patient and we've been too ambitious in terms of trying to squeeze too much in and not having long enough breaks for morning tea and afternoon tea. And anyway, we'll try to be better next time. But there are some important thanks just to get through. First is to everyone who contributed to actually getting the Bulu Activist Centre fit for purpose. This was always a good space, but it needed some serious work to perform its function for the next 20 years, and getting a kitchen and disability accessible toilets was part of that. As I mentioned at the fundraiser last night, it's cost us 170 grand, which is a lot for a small group of activists, right? And so big thanks to our national organisation, which has shown faith in us on this side of the continent and put money into it, and also to all the activists, I won't name them by name, who've made some really significant donations, and the hard graft to get it fit to that point. Outside of the times when I'm in an action where I'm prepared to break the law, I'm actually normally quite a sort of a law-abiding kind of person. And you would not believe the sigh of relief I heaved when our City of Perth occupancy permit arrived 3:30 p.m. last Tuesday. So only 4 days to spare. That was good. All right. The other big thanks is to the Victorian crew who came over. Most of them a week early, but Jacob 2 weeks early. We just couldn't have done it without them. That was huge. So that was setting stuff up, doing last minute renovations, putting in some of the cabinet work in the kitchen, constructing the stage, other stuff like that. The fact that I got COVID at about the time they turned up made their arrival very fortuitous. I can tell you, it was very difficult for me, being a bit of a control freak, to have to step away and just let people do it the way they thought they should be done. So that was good. So that was just absolutely huge. So to have Jacob, Sue, Tim, Mick, and Lisa turn up to do that. Also, the people that we didn't know who were building the conference and promoting it as well. So the Margaret River crew. That was just fantastic. So it was really great to meet somebody who came to the conference because they found a flyer in a cafe in Kalwarram. That was huge. Obviously, I can't name everybody, but there's some I do. And so for Michael and Norian, who just took care of the food, the whole conference. The revolution can't happen on an empty stomach, and they just absolutely bust their guts for 2 days to make that happen. I mean, that was really, really huge. Obviously, all the members of the organising committee, and we'll make a special shout out to Fred wherever he is, who really did the hard work in terms of lining up our international guests, scheduling, all that sort of stuff. That was just really, really, really important. And also our tech team down the back. I mean, we've never had such a well organised. Because we were, when we've done this conference in Sydney and Melbourne, it's been, in the magnitude of hundreds of people. And so, we could never, our legal capacity is 90 in this room, which we exceeded, but not by that much, Don't tell the City of Perth. So to make the most of it, but we're still paying the same sort of money, to get our guests out. So the live streaming really had to work for it to be worth the effort, So that was fantastic. The guests as well, it's like, here in Perth, we do feel like we're living in the kind of fossil fuel little white imperialist Death Star outpost, And it's like, you just think. I always say to new comrades, look, it's fantastic you've become an activist in Perth, but, who knows, but this could be the last place the revolution comes to in the world. But the point is this, wherever you are, you have to fight and do your best. And the place where you grew up is where you have the cultural knowledge of how to engage with people, But our international guests really help. They just help. It just puts fuel in the tank. It's fantastic. And, it is amazing for the difference of, the cultural and national differences to relate with people who come from the other side of the world with totally different national context and kinds of struggle, but to still actually think, I have something in common with these people. We are part of the same struggle. It's different fronts of the struggle, but it is part of the same struggle. It's not this sort of workers of the world, it's not just rhetorical stuff. It's actually fucking real when you meet those people. It's just, and they, as well as the their intellectual inspiration and just their sheer guts and determination. I mean but they kind of shock us as well into picking up our game. Like if a comrade like Clifton, who has to be on the front line of really vicious boss landlord state violence in fighting for Indigenous Adivasi and Dalit people, is shocked by what he sees in Perth in terms of state violence towards Aboriginal people and neglect and that sort of stuff. It does make you realise you can get so ground down by capitalism that you stop. You just think, oh yeah, so the cops killed another person in Perth, last winter, what was the number? I think there was like something. Don't quote me on the number. It could be 5, could be 6. Like 5 homeless Indigenous women died on the streets of Perth in a cold winter last year. Like this is in this mind-bogglingly wealthy little corner of the earth, and so we can just get sort of ground down and oh yeah, that just happened, It's like no, we need like let's put ourselves on the line. This is really important. And I was thinking about that too with when we were hearing about the struggle in West Papua and Kanaki, New Caledonia, 2 places where you've got Melanesian Indigenous people who've been dispossessed, and it's like you think, well, actually, us in Australia, we're the regional imperialist power, so us as the left in Australia, it's our job to try and link those struggles, to link Kanaki with Indigenous Australia, with West Papua. I mean, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for West Papuans and Indigenous Australians to learn French, or for Kanaks to learn English and... No, we've got to do the work to try and make those connections happen, and to overcome the barrier to communication that colonialism has imposed, So our international guests remind us of that. And of course, everyone here has made a contribution. That's what I really want to thank, It's us in Socialist Alliance, we certainly don't pretend to have all the answers. We think we have got some ideas that are worth carrying forward from history and to new generations of activists, but we don't pretend to have all the answers. And so to have other activists, both overseas and from Australia, who can contribute to that discussion is just so mightily valuable. It's a reminder of the fact that a better world is possible. There's no guarantees, that capitalism won't just fuck us all, right? But a better world is possible, and it's possible if people act, and the way we get a glimpse of that future possible world is by struggle, and being with people in struggle across the world like that, it is a reminder that we are fighting for a world where humanity lives in peace with the planet, where the creative human potential of every person can be realised, that our struggle, it is about our love for humanity. It is that simple. That's what we're doing. It's all about. And and we shouldn't lose sight of that. And in all the trials and tribulations and frustrations we have with ourselves and with each other, that's what it's about. So okay, I was originally going to just suggest that we finish up with a couple of chants. One that we've been doing on the streets, and then one that's a sort of an old favourite Australian one. But what I'm going to suggest we do is gather for if people, if only those that want to be in the photo. But if we gather for oh, sorry, yes. Just before that, we'll draw the raffle, and then I'll explain the purpose behind the photo shoot. So we've got to draw the raffle. It all goes to paying for the Bulu Activist Centre. So just sit tight for the photo. We're going to draw the raffle. Are the tickets going in, Andrew?